Hi, and welcome to Reddit Confessions. Today's story, it doesn't start with love. It doesn't start with a wedding or a vacation or some slow-burning tension. No. It starts with a jar of pickles. Yeah, pickles. Because that's when I realized my marriage was over. It was 8:34 p.m. I remember because the microwave had just finished reheating my leftover stew, and I reached into the fridge for a jar of pickles. Ember, my wife, loves pickles. We were supposed to share them during dinner, like we always did. Dumb tradition, I know, but it was ours. The jar was gone. No big deal. Probably finished. Except. I found it. Empty. Not in the trash. Not in the recycling. But in the front passenger seat of her car. Next to an unfamiliar hoodie. And a crumpled gas station receipt, 2 energy drinks, a pack of gum, and 1 extra large condom box. I stood in our garage, holding that stupid pickle jar, staring at her dashboard like it owed me an explanation. And that's when I heard her behind me. "No touching today," she said. Like it was a command. Like I was some overly friendly customer at a retail store. I turned around. She was leaning against the doorframe, arms crossed, hair still wet from a shower I didn't know she took. She wasn't mad. She wasn't sad. She just looked inconvenienced. And I was still holding a glass jar like it was my emotional support object. "Excuse me?" I asked. She sighed. Not the heavy, angry kind. No. The tired, done kind. "I just don't want to pretend anymore, Russ." I swear my brain glitched. Like someone pressed pause on reality. I blinked. Pretend? She walked past me like I was a stranger in her way. "You're not stupid," she muttered. "You know." And just like that, our marriage was officially a silent movie. For the next 48 hours, I played my role. I cooked. I did the laundry. I watered her ridiculous hanging plants that she once swore had personalities. She didn't touch me. Didn't speak to me unless it was to say, "Don't forget the mail." Didn't even sit on the same side of the couch anymore. On the third night, she came in late. I mean, late. She reeked of someone else's cologne. And I don't mean subtle, hugged a coworker, cologne. I mean, was held against a chest for 2 hours straight, cologne. I didn't ask. Because I already knew. You feel it. In your ribs. In your spine. In your soul, if that's still functioning. The next morning, I stood by the coffee machine. She walked into the kitchen like it was her house and I was the tenant overstaying my lease. I finally spoke. "Are we even still doing this?" I asked. She didn't blink. "No more us," she said, like it was a relief to finally let that balloon go. Then she sipped from my mug, and turned on her heel like nothing happened. I smiled. A real smile. The kind that says, "I'm not okay, but I know what I have to do now." I left that afternoon. Took my old laptop, my coat, and 3 Tupperware containers. She didn't ask where I was going. She didn't even pretend to care. But the story doesn't end there. Because a week later, I found out who the hoodie belonged to. And what she really meant by, "no touching." Let's just say, she touched someone. A lot. Stay tuned for part 2, because what I discovered next shook every memory I ever had of her. You're watching Reddit Confessions. Don't forget to comment below if you've ever realized you were just a placeholder in someone else's life. I didn't leave like they do in movies, storming out, slamming doors, screaming something clever. I left like a man too emotionally numb to finish his coffee. Quietly. Half-heartedly. I told Ember I had a client meeting out of town. She nodded, eyes on her phone, and said, "Okay. Take your time." "No, I love you." No, drive safe. Just, take your time. I knew then I could be gone a day, a week, or forever, and she wouldn't flinch. I stayed at a motel that smelled like mold and broken promises. The kind of place where the vending machines only take quarters and the curtains don't quite close all the way. But it was quiet, and for the first time in months, so was my mind. That is, until I opened my email and saw the subject line, Invoice from Mariner Rooftop Lounge. Ember had forgotten that I was still listed as the backup email on our shared rewards account. Inside the receipt, 2 entrees, 2 drinks, 1 dessert, shared. Under special notes, it said anniversary table by the window. Our anniversary was 3 weeks away. So, whose anniversary were they celebrating? I shouldn't have done what I did next. I know that. But curiosity, pain, and pride are a dangerous cocktail. I drove home the next evening and parked 2 houses down. I watched the glow of our living room flicker between warm light and blue shadows. Around 10:15 p.m., a car pulled into the driveway. Not Ember's. Not mine. It was him. He was taller than me. That's the first thing I noticed. Confident stride. Athletic build. He wore my hoodie. The one she'd said she donated last fall because it was stretched out. I sat in the car, gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles went white. I watched her come to the door barefoot, laughing. Laughing like I hadn't seen in months. She jumped into his arms. He caught her like they'd done it 1,000 times. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I just whispered, so this is what no touching looks like. The next morning, I returned while she was at work. I wasn't there to fight. I wasn't there to plead. I was there to erase myself. I packed a single duffel bag, some clothes, my watch, the little wooden bird carving my late dad gave me, and a few books she never touched. I left my wedding ring on the nightstand, placed carefully on her closed journal. And then I saw her phone light up. One new message. From Gray. Just Gray. No emoji. No last name. But now I had a name for the hoodie. The message said. Last night was perfect. I wish I could have stayed. Her reply. Soon. I'm almost done pretending. That line hit harder than I expected. I was the pretending. I was the placeholder. I left the house. But this time, something inside me felt different. I wasn't just hurt, I was unraveling. Because for years, I thought love faded like sunlight. Slowly. Warm at first, then gradually dimming. I didn't know it could be yanked away, shoved into someone else's arms, and called progress. I checked into a nicer hotel that night. One with working lamps and clean sheets. I stared at the ceiling for hours, wondering how many things she lied about. How many nights she smiled at me while texting him. How long she rehearsed the sentence, no more us. I scrolled back through our messages, those old texts with heart emojis and inside jokes. One thread had a photo of the 2 of us in Maine, where she wrote. Let's never lose this version of us. We lost it. She lost it. Or maybe she gave it away. I haven't confronted her yet. Not really. But I'm planning something. Not revenge, not the kind that makes headlines. Just truth. Cold, undeniable truth. The kind that makes liars blink first. And Gray. He has no idea who I am. Not yet. But he will. I don't know what came over me. I'd like to say it was dignity. Or some noble desire to stand up for myself. But honestly, it was probably just desperation, desperation disguised as courage. Because the day after I left, after packing up my things and disappearing without a word, I showed up at Gray's gym. I'd done some digging. Ember once mentioned he worked in movement science, which was her pretentious way of saying personal trainer. I remembered a post she'd liked on social media months ago, from a local gym downtown. Gray's name was tagged. Took me 15 minutes to confirm his identity and another 15 to plan what I'd say if I saw him. But when I did see him, I froze. There he was. Loud, charming, commanding the room. Wearing my hoodie like it had always been his. Shouting encouragement at some guy struggling with deadlifts. Smiling that fake charming smile that people mistake for charisma. He didn't recognize me. Of course not. I was the man Ember never posted about. The one she stopped inviting to her work events 2 years ago. The one she used to call her Rock and now probably just called Russ. I didn't approach him that day. I couldn't. Instead, I stood outside his gym for 20 minutes, gripping my phone like it was a weapon. My screen glowed with a message I had typed but never sent. I know about you. But I didn't send it. Not yet. That night, I checked into another hotel, this time on the edge of town. Quiet, remote, and nowhere near the life I used to have. I spent hours pacing, listening to old voicemails Ember left me back when she still cared. The one where she laughed about burning the pancakes. The one where she whispered, "I miss you," when I was away on a work trip. The one where she told me, "There's no version of this life I want that doesn't include you." Lies. All of it, lies. I finally cracked and called her. She didn't answer. Straight to voicemail. I didn't leave one. Instead, I called our mutual friend, Tracy, a sweet, painfully honest woman who'd always seemed a little uncomfortable around Ember lately. I told her I wasn't okay. I told her I needed to know the truth. She hesitated, but only for a second. "Russell," she said slowly, "you really didn't know?" Those 4 words hit like a freight train. According to Tracy, the affair had been going on for nearly a year. Ember met Gray when she booked personal training sessions. Said she was working on rediscovering herself. That phrase again. The one women say right before they throw away the man who watched them cry in the bathroom at 2 a.m. Tracy didn't give me every detail, but she gave me enough. Enough to feel like I'd been sucker punched by reality. While I was budgeting for our home renovation, Ember was traveling to hiking retreats, most of which were weekends with Gray and boutique rentals. I asked Tracy one final question. One I already knew the answer to. Did she ever talk about me? There was a long pause. Then, softly, she said. She said you were sweet. But too predictable. Sweet. Predictable. That's what I'd become in her story. A boring footnote. The safe option she kept around until something exciting came along. That night, I drank half a bottle of cheap hotel wine and opened a blank email. No subject. Just one sentence. I know everything. I didn't send it to Ember. I sent it to Gray. His business email. Professional. Direct. Unmistakable. 3 minutes later, he replied. Who is this? I didn't answer. I let it sit. Because next, I planned to show up. Not to fight. Not to shout. But to make sure they both saw what they tried so hard to erase. Me. I didn't sleep the night I sent that message. I lay awake staring at the water stains on the hotel ceiling, imagining all the ways Gray might react. Would he deny it? Would he run to Ember and warn her? Would he show up at my door swinging? He did none of that. Instead, I got another email the next morning. Can we talk? Man to man. He suggested a neutral spot, some trendy cafe where people go to be seen reading books they don't understand. I agreed. I didn't tell Ember. I didn't tell anyone. I just threw on the wrinkled button-down from my suitcase and showed up 15 minutes early. He walked in like he owned the place. Confident. Cool. Not a single trace of guilt in his expression. He looked around, spotted me, then came over with a smile like we were catching up after a softball game. "Russell, right?" he said, offering his hand like I should shake it. I didn't. I just stared. Let the silence sit heavy between us until he finally dropped his arm and sighed. "I guess you know." I nodded once. "I do now." He leaned back, arms crossed. "Look, man, I didn't know she was married when we met." "Not at first. She told me you were separated." Separated. That word echoed through my ribs. She used it like punctuation while I was still doing her laundry and paying the mortgage. I asked him the one question that had kept me up for weeks. "Were you in love with her?" He paused. Not out of guilt. Out of strategy. Like he was measuring the emotional yield of his next sentence. "I think so," he said carefully. "But she said it was complicated." Complicated. Another word women use when they're about to destroy you politely. I looked him dead in the eye. "She said she was almost done pretending." He blinked. That surprised him. "She told you that?" "She texted you that," I snapped. "I saw it." Now he looked uncomfortable. Like he hadn't expected me to have receipts. Like I was supposed to be the sad, clueless husband in a movie who just fades out after the affair is exposed. But I wasn't fading. Not this time. After an awkward silence, Gray pulled his wallet from his jacket and slid a small card across the table. "I get that you're angry," he said. "But if you ever want to talk to someone, I've got a therapist who helped me through a divorce last year." I stared at the card. He was giving me a therapist. The guy who slept with my wife. Wore my clothes. Used my life. And now he was giving me a referral. "I don't want your help," I said, voice low and shaking. "I want to understand what made me invisible in my own home." Gray looked at me like I was speaking a language he didn't understand. "Sometimes people outgrow each other," he said. "Doesn't mean it was personal." That broke something inside me. It was personal to me. I left him sitting there with his oat milk latte and his clean conscience. I didn't take the card. I didn't look back. When I got to my car, my phone lit up. A text from Ember. "Can we talk later?" Not "where are you?" Not "I'm sorry." Not even "I miss you." Just, "can we talk later?" Like we were coordinating a dentist appointment. I didn't reply. Not right away. I drove aimlessly for hours. Past the grocery store where we used to argue about cereal. Past the park where we once carved our initials into a bench. Past the library where we used to sit for hours reading next to each other in silence. All of it gone. Scrubbed clean. That night, I did something I hadn't done in years. I called my older brother, Dean. We'd drifted apart. Mostly my fault. I stopped showing up to family gatherings. Always said Ember and I had plans. Truth was, Ember didn't like Dean. Said he was too opinionated. Too loud. Too judgmental. Funny thing is, everything she hated about him was everything I needed now. When I told him what happened, he didn't say, "I told you so." He just said, "Come home." Not metaphorically. Literally. He meant his guest room. I packed the rest of my things the next morning. Ember wasn't home. I didn't leave a note. I didn't need to. Because I wasn't vanishing this time. I was watching from a distance. And the final chapter of this marriage wasn't going to be written by the woman who made me disappear. Dean didn't ask questions when I showed up at his door with 2 suitcases and a box of memories I couldn't bring myself to throw out. He just stepped aside, handed me a cold beer, and said, "You'll sleep better here." He was wrong, of course. I didn't sleep better. I just didn't sleep next to someone who had been pretending I wasn't there for over a year. I spent the next few days in a haze, between checking job emails and trying to appear functional. Every now and then, Ember would text. Never full sentences. Just breadcrumbs. You okay? Should we talk? I didn't mean for it to happen like this. But she never called. Never cried. Never said, come back. And that silence said more than any apology ever could. But then on Thursday, I got a call. From our neighbor, Mrs. Flanagan, the sweet retired teacher who still bakes her own bread and always pretends not to notice when people fight too loud through the walls. Russell, honey, she said in that concerned, careful tone, there's been a package sitting outside your door for 2 days now. Rain's coming. Want me to bring it in? I told her I'd swing by in an hour. Something told me I needed to go alone. The house smelled the same, like lavender, warm wood, and a little too much of whatever diffuser Ember kept refilling. But everything else felt foreign. The hallway photos were still there, but I noticed something I hadn't before. One of them had been taken down. The one of us on the dock in Vermont, where she had her head on my shoulder and I looked like a man who hadn't yet learned the art of being ignored. That photo was gone. Vanished. My feet carried me, almost on autopilot, into the bedroom. The dresser was half emptied. Her side of the bed now held only a single pillow. Minimalist. Clean. Erased. I don't know why I did it, maybe I was hoping to find closure, or maybe I just wanted one last piece of truth before disappearing again, but I opened the top drawer of her nightstand. Inside were receipts, lip balm, an old bookmark, and an envelope. Thick. Cream-colored. Sealed. No name on the outside, but it was addressed to someone. I opened it. Inside were printed photographs. Not digital. Printed. Carefully arranged. A man and a woman, at a cabin, in a hot tub, in bed, laughing, kissing. The man was gray. The woman was not Ember. I stared at the photos, confused, then horrified. She wasn't just cheating on me. She was being cheated on too. Gray wasn't some fairy tale escape. He wasn't Ember's Prince Charming or clean-cut exit plan. He was a serial charmer. A professional mirror, showing women what they wanted to see until they left their stability for his chaos. Then he'd move on. Just like he was already doing now. At the bottom of the envelope was a printed email thread between Gray and the other woman. It ended with, "You know I never promised her anything. She was just, convenient. Convenient. That's what my marriage had been reduced to. A bridge for him. A placeholder for her. And a prison for me." I sat down on the bed, envelope still in my hands, when I heard the front door open. Ember. She froze in the doorway of the bedroom, her keys dangling from one hand, shopping bag in the other. "I didn't know you'd be here," she said, voice flat. I didn't say anything. Just held up the envelope. Her eyes widened. Not in fear. In recognition. "You went through my drawer. You hid this?" I asked, standing. "Why?" She dropped the bag on the floor. "Because I didn't want you to know I was wrong. You don't get it, if I left for someone who hurt me, then what does that make me?" I laughed. Not loudly. Just enough to let the bitterness out. "It makes you exactly what I already knew you were," I said. Confused. Selfish. And running from the mirror. She sat on the edge of the bed, suddenly looking smaller, like someone who just realized the world doesn't wait for your excuses. "I thought he loved me," she whispered. "I thought you loved me," I replied. We sat there in silence for a while. No yelling. No grand finale. Just the quiet crumbling of something that should have broken long ago. And then I left. Again. But this time, not empty. This time, I had the truth. And something Ember didn't. The knowledge that she gave everything up. For a man who had nothing real to offer. It had been 3 days since I walked out of the house for what I swore would be the final time. I was staying at Dean's place, sleeping on a mattress that had more springs than support, waking up to the sound of his dog snoring on my feet. He'd given me space, too much of it. Because space lets silence grow. And in that silence, Ember's voice lived like a ghost in my chest. I told myself I was done. That I had all the closure I needed. The affair. The lies. The pictures. The envelope. But then came her call. I almost didn't answer. The screen flashed her name, Ember, still not changed to anything dramatic like, "Don't answer," or, "Why would you?" and I just stared at it. The last time we spoke, she didn't cry. She didn't explain. She just looked tired and left with that now iconic shrug of hers. But something told me to answer. Morbid curiosity. A sick need for finality. Or maybe, God help me, hope. "Hey," she said, too softly. "Can you talk?" "I don't think I should," I replied, already bracing for more damage. "It's not about us," she added quickly. "It's. I need your help." My stomach dropped. I sat down on the edge of Dean's guest bed, confused and already regretting picking up. "What could you possibly need from me?" I asked. There was a pause. Then came the words I never expected to hear. "I need you to lie for me." She wanted me to meet her the next day at a cafe halfway between our house and where I was staying. She didn't want to say more over the phone. "Too complicated," she said. But her voice, it was different this time. Nervous. Rushed. Like she was trying to manage something spiraling out of her control. I showed up 5 minutes early. She was already there. Hoodie pulled tight over her head. Sunglasses. No makeup. Ember didn't do casual unless she was hiding. She looked at me like I was a lifeline she didn't deserve, but still hoped might reach back. "I just need you to say you've been living at the house this whole time," she said, avoiding eye contact. I blinked. "What?" "My job, there's this policy. Image matters. I'm being reviewed for a promotion. If they think I walked out of my marriage, especially into someone else's arms, it's over." I stared at her. This wasn't guilt. This wasn't reconciliation. This wasn't an apology. It was damage control. She continued, "I know it's selfish. But I've worked years for this. You know what it means to me." I laughed. Actually laughed. In public. People turned. "What it meant to you?" I repeated. "I was what meant something to you, Ember. Or so I thought." "I'm not asking you to forgive me," she said quickly. "Just, sign a statement. A letter. Saying we're still technically living together and amicable. That there was no infidelity. And if I don't?" She paused. That long, cruel pause. "I'll lose the offer. And possibly my job." I wish I could say I stood up and walked out like a man with boundaries. But I didn't. I just stared at her. My brain kept playing scenes from our life together like they still meant something. Like they could be traded for decency. "Let me think about it," I said, standing. "I'll let you know." I didn't hug her. Didn't shake her hand. I left her there, seated in the middle of a lie she hadn't finished telling. That night, I sat at Dean's kitchen table, staring at the blank letter she'd emailed me. I, Russell Whitlow, confirm that I continue to reside with my spouse, Ember Whitlow, and that our separation is amicable and unrelated to third parties. I stared at that last line. Unrelated to third parties. Gray's face flashed in my mind. That envelope. That photo that disappeared from our hallway wall. That message, she was just, convenient. And yet, part of me still wanted to do it. Not for her. Not even for me. But because if I did it, I could tell myself that all of it, the wasted years, the humiliation, the betrayal, at least meant something. That I hadn't been nothing to her. But that's the dangerous thing about betrayal. It doesn't just make you doubt them. It makes you doubt yourself. So I did the only thing I could do. I forwarded the letter to my lawyer and wrote just 2 words beneath it. Not signing. The next morning, I got a text from Ember. No words. Just a photo of the signed divorce papers. And a final message. Then we're done. Officially. 3 weeks passed. 3 weeks of silence, of cold mornings and 2 quiet nights. Dean had stopped asking if I was okay, because, honestly, there was no right answer anymore. I wasn't okay, but I wasn't entirely broken either. I was something in between. Hollow. Like a man who'd been peeled and left to dry in the sun. I didn't hear from Ember again. No texts. No calls. No explanations. She'd sent the signed divorce papers. No note, no closure. Just a PDF stamped by some faceless notary and a digital smiley face emoji she probably didn't mean to include. I should have felt free. But instead, I felt suspicious. Because something about how easy it all ended just didn't sit right with me. She'd fought harder for a refund on a hotel room once. And now, after everything, after 10 years, after betrayal, after asking me to lie for her, she walked away with a legal signature and total silence. No apology. No panic. No trace. That wasn't Ember. That was strategy. And I was right. It was a random Tuesday when the first weird thing happened. I got a letter in the mail at Dean's place, addressed to Russell Whitlow and spouse. It was from a bank I didn't recognize. Inside, a notification of a joint loan application, approved. Amount, $48,200. What caught my eye wasn't the money. It was the signature line. Ember had signed for both of us. And worse, she'd used my old signature, scanned from our mortgage paperwork. She didn't even try to fake it. She just copied it like I was nothing more than a name on a form. I froze. Cold shot through my chest. It wasn't just betrayal now. This was identity theft. I called the number listed. The bank rep was polite, too polite. I told them I had no knowledge of the loan. They said it was flagged for a secondary identity check. I told them it wasn't me. They said they'd look into it. But I didn't stop there. I went to our old house that afternoon, heart racing the entire drive. It was technically still half mine until the paperwork was finalized. I didn't know if she'd be there. I didn't know if I wanted her to be. But the door was unlocked. And the house was empty. I don't mean clean or freshly moved out. I mean stripped. No furniture. No photos. No plants. No sheets on the bed. Just shadows where our life used to live. The only thing left was a small white box in the closet. Like she forgot it, or meant to. Inside were documents. Loose papers. Medical bills. Credit statements. Shredded envelopes. And then, buried at the bottom, a piece of mail that stopped my heart. It was a hospital intake form. From a private clinic 2 states away. Dated 4 months ago. Name of patient, Riley Ember Shaw. Not Ember Whitlow. Shaw. Her maiden name. And then below that, emergency contact listed, Grayson Miller. Gray. So she hadn't just moved on. She'd changed names. She'd given him legal status in her life, while still using mine behind the scenes. It was too much. I sat on the floor of that empty house and stared at the form until my vision blurred. I wasn't angry. Not anymore. I was something worse. Erased. Erased as a husband. Erased as a partner. Erased from her story, but still used like a spare part when she needed convenience. This wasn't a breakup. This wasn't infidelity. This was a woman who had constructed a backup life in parallel with mine, quietly replacing me until all that remained was the paperwork. I left the house and drove straight to my lawyer's office. I handed him everything. The forged loan. The hospital form. The updated name. I asked him to dig, financially, legally, deeply. And what he found made everything worse. The next few weeks were a blur of signatures, legal filings, and numb coffee cups. My lawyer worked fast. Ember's trail unraveled even faster. She'd used my identity to apply for 2 loans and attempted to refinance part of our shared equity under her maiden name while my name still sat on the deed. But when confronted with the evidence, she folded. There were no fights, no fake tears, no begging for understanding. She signed what she had to sign and vanished. Like smoke. No more texts. No more guilt. No more half-truths. Just silence. But this time, it didn't hurt. Because something strange happened during those final steps of paperwork and closure. I started remembering who I was before I became someone else's emotional ghost. I took walks in the morning. I opened books I hadn't touched in years. I called people back, my mom, my cousin, even an old college roommate I'd lost touch with. Dean, bless him, never once said, "I told you so." He just invited me to work with him for a few weeks doing small repairs and custom woodworking. It was dusty, slow, and oddly healing. Every nail I hammered in felt like I was building something inside myself too. Then one afternoon, I found myself driving up north to a little antique bookstore Ember always said was too far to bother with. I went anyway. And while thumbing through a bin of old vinyls, a woman next to me laughed and said, "Careful, those crates bite." She had paint on her hands. Her name was Delaney. She restored old furniture and liked Leonard Cohen too much for someone born in the 90s. We talked for almost an hour in that dusty corner. About music. About bad coffee. About why broken things are sometimes worth saving. Not once did I mention Ember. Not because I was hiding it, but because for the first time in years, she wasn't in the room with me anymore. So yeah, Ember betrayed me. She built a second life behind my back, turned love into paperwork, and tried to write me out of a story I helped build. But in trying to erase me, she actually forced me to rediscover myself. I'm not healed. Not fully. I still double-check bank statements. I still wake up sometimes wondering what I missed. But I don't feel small anymore. I don't feel invisible. I feel like me again. And that's more than I ever expected when this started with a stupid jar of pickles. You've been watching Reddit Confessions, and if you've made it to the end, thank you. Seriously. If this story reminded you of anything from your own life, drop it in the comments. A moment that surprised you, changed you, or maybe even saved you. I read every one of them. And if nothing else, remember. Being erased by someone else doesn't mean you disappear. Sometimes, it just means you get to start over with a clean page. Until next time. Stay strong. And stay honest. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this story if it moved you. This is Reddit Confessions. And everyone has a story.